So in this video, we're going to be graphing linear equations in point-slope form. So the two distinctions you need to make before you can continue this section is parallel versus perpendicular. So parallel lines never intersect. They're two lines that go at the same rate in the same direction. So they never cross, never intersect. The way that the slopes are related is parallel lines have the same slope. So if one line has a slope of 2, all parallel lines to that would have a slope of 2 as well. Perpendicular lines, on the other hand, they cross, but at a 90-degree angle. So they have what's called opposite reciprocal slopes. Opposite, meaning that you're going to change the sign. So if it's positive, it goes to negative. If it's negative, it goes to positive. Reciprocal, meaning you take it and flip it upside down. So if it's 1 over 3, the reciprocal would be 3 over 1. If it's 5, the reciprocal would be 1 over 5. So here's our first example. Parallel, I want to find a line that's parallel to negative 7x minus 4y equals negative 3 through the point negative 3, 3, right in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go through point slope, which is this equation. So with point slope, I need a point and a slope. Well, I have a point. Here's my point. I do not have a slope though. So I'm going to take this equation and pull the slope out of it because it said that my line is parallel to that line. So to get the slope, I need to get it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to solve this thing for y. Okay, now I take this, that's my slope. That's the only thing I use out of that whole line because I just want the slope so that I can then plug in the slope for my equation. So because these are parallel lines, we just saw on the last page that parallel lines have the same slope. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to replace it with my m. So my new slope is negative 7 over 4. And then I use the point that was given to me in the question. So the point negative 3, 3, which means where there was a y1, I'm going to put a 3. Where there was an x1, I'm going to put a negative 3. So I have y minus 3, and then x minus negative 3 turns into plus 3. Now I need to solve this thing for y. So I'm going to add 3, distribute, and then I'm going to combine those. So there will be my equation. All right, next one. Write an equation parallel to the y-axis through the point negative 1, 0. So first thing I need to do is think about what it's asking me. It says parallel to the y-axis. So here is the y-axis, the vertical axis. So anything that is a line straight up and down will be parallel to that axis. Now, any of those lines would work, except it says that goes through the point negative 1, 0. So I'm going to want to plot that point and get an idea of, okay, well, where are they actually asking me for? So the point negative 1, 0 is going to be right there. Well, the only vertical line that goes through the point negative 1, 0 is the line y equals negative 1. Sorry, x equals negative 1. Because this is a vertical line, I'm using the Vux part of Hoivux. Because it's a vertical line, I want x equals a number. Well, this point, the x equation would be x equals negative 1. So that would actually be your answer. All right, next one, find an equation that passes through the point negative 4, 2 and is perpendicular to the line y equals negative 1. So this time they gave me a picture, so I don't have to draw it, and they told me that I want to be perpendicular to the line given. So there's my line, y equals negative 1. Well, perpendicular lines would have to cross at a 90-degree angle, so if I can fill in that line. Well, that line is perpendicular to y equals negative 1 and also passes through the point negative 4, 2. Well, what's the equation of that line? Since it's a vertical line, it's the Vux part, which means I need x equals, and the number in place of x in this point is negative 2. So I have x equals, negative 4. So I have x equals negative 4 as my equation. All right, last example. Find an equation perpendicular to negative 5x plus 7y equals negative 1, having the same y-intercept as x minus 3y equals negative 8. So this is kind of like they've asked me two parts. First thing, I want to be perpendicular to this. So let's talk about what that means. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So that means I'm going to pull this thing apart, and I need to pull out the slope because my line, they want it to be opposite reciprocal. So I have this equation, solve for y because I need to get the slope out, and the easiest way to get the slope is to be in slope-intercept form. Okay, so there's that line up there, negative 5x plus 7y equals negative 1. There's the slope-intercept version, which means now I can easily find the slope. The slope in this is 5 over 7. But my line, it says I want a line perpendicular to that one. So perpendicular would be flip it and opposite. So flip this, 7 over 5, and change the sign. So my slope is going to be negative 7 over 5. So that's the first part. Then the second part says, okay, we'll take that and make a y-intercept the same as this line. So I'm going to do the same thing, get it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to subtract x. Divide by negative 3. So there's my equation, and remember the question, referencing back to the question, says having the same y-intercept as that. Well, here is my y-intercept. And the y-intercept, it says the same, not perpendicular or anything like that. So it's the same y-intercept. So my equation is going to be combine those two parts. Y equals mx plus b. Well, here's my m. Here's my b. So my final equation is going to be negative 7 over 5x plus 8 over 3. That is your final answer.